please subscribe and don't forget to press the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload a new video.
Well, the government's electric vehicle drive seems to have hit a speed bump. Even as the industry grapples with the policy uncertainty and confusion, state-run EESL has decided to scrap the second tender for the procurement of 10,000 electric cars. This cancellation comes in the backdrop of EESL's first tender for EVs running into trouble. Reports suggest EESL is going slow on procuring cars from Tata Motors and Mahindra as part of its first order. This allegedly due to concerns of underperformance. But Tata Motors in a statement has clarified that its electric vehicle, the TaMo, is fully compliant with the eligibility criteria. So far, about 150 electric cars have been put on the road. The target under phase 1 of the first tender was about 500. Thus, this presents a sobering picture of the gaps between India's EV dreams and reality. To discuss these developments and the road ahead, I have with me the Managing Director of EESL, Saurabh Kumar. Mr. Kumar, appreciate you joining me here on CNBC TV 18. Let me start by getting you to clarify for us, what is the reason that EESL has decided to scrap the second tender for procuring 10,000 additional electric vehicles? Reports seem to suggest that this has to do with the change in charging code, which has not been clarified yet by the Department of Science and Technology. Other reports seem to suggest that perhaps you've decided to go slow on concerns related to underperformance of the current vehicles. Where does the truth lie?
Thanks for having me here. I mean, number one, let me say, as you rightly mentioned in your first opinion, that the reason why we have held back the second tender is that the charging specifications are undergoing a change. We saw a draft note specification come out, which is a very open specification and allows all kinds of charging to be under one roof. It was put out for public comments. The public comments have come. As I understand now, they are getting into the final stages of approval. Okay. So we thought it's appropriate to wait till these specifications are notified and then put out the tender, because if a higher specification charging infrastructure is around, then we can have longer range of cars. Okay. Now, this has nothing to do, let me clarify, on, first of all, there is no problem technically with either the Tata Motors or with Mahindra. Okay. Almost 150 cars are running in Delhi, as you rightly mentioned. 450 cars are getting in various stages of registration. Every month, August onwards, 500 cars will go to Andhra Pradesh. So, and almost 6 months there have been people, senior government officials who have been using this car. We have not been told of any. You've got no complaints? No, at all, not at all.
Okay, I'll get into the specifications of the issues that have been raised. You're saying you've got no complaints, but the issues that have been raised, at least as per media reports, to do with Tata Motors and the Mahindra Verito in just a second. But let me go back to the scrapping of the tender. Now, you said that the Department of Science and Technology is in the process of putting together the new charging code. Right. Why is it different from the code that the first tender had put in place, which was the Bharat charging code? Why do we need a different code for the second tender? How much does this have to do with the fact that you're opening up room or space in this tender for higher or luxury sedans, for instance?
Well, it's not just about luxury sedans or anything. I mean, if you look at charging specifications worldwide, they go from level 1 to level 5, which are basically measured from the time taken to charge fully a car. The ones that were specified earlier, which are level 1 chargers, based on which we have bought the cars, they can charge a car which is about 17 to 20 kilowatt hour battery in about 90 minutes. Okay. Now, if you're looking at a full-blown mobility, we need to replicate what happens on a petrol station. Level 5 charging stations that are available in the world can charge in less than 5 minutes. So it's important to have these state-of-the-art charging specifications so that you can get better quality of cars, also to attract people to invest in electric cars.
So what is the dilemma? Going the Japanese route or going the European route? Are those the two norms that the DST as well as the EESL finds itself sort of struggling to arrive at a middle ground?
Let me first say that EESL is not part of this.
The DST is, yes. But I'm sure that they've sought your feedback as a key stakeholder.
No. Anyway, so the draft...
They haven't?
No, they have. The draft that came out, which we have supported, includes both the CCS and the CHAdeMO specification. Yeah. So it's an open specification. Anyone which can provide level 1 to either of the two is possible. Okay. Under a roof, you can have both as well as
So then why the delay?
No, it's a government process. You have to necessarily put this out for public comments for at least 2 months. That's a part of the, and now once you have the public the comments in place, someone needs to take a look at that, see what is possible to be included or not included. Then it goes through a process of legal vetting within the government. I think that is what is happening. I don't think there's any delay.
So how much longer will the wait be?
I will be the wrong person to ask this, because simply speaking, that part is...
But is the time period for public consultation over?
Over. It has gone.
How long has that been over for?
I think about 3 or 4 weeks.
Okay, so 3 or 4 weeks, the period for public consultation is over. So now the legal vetting will
I mean, whatever
take
it
place.
is, you'll have to... I am not the right person really to tell you where the process currently is.
So do you feel confident that you will be able to put the second tender in the market in this calendar year?
Absolutely.
You do feel confident about that?
Absolutely.
Okay, let me now get into the specific issues to do with the first tender, and that is where you decided to procure the Tigor from Tata Motors and the Verito from M&M. As you pointed out, 150 vehicles on the road between Delhi and Andhra Pradesh, I was given to understand as well. In phase 1, the expectation was 500. You're saying that they're in various stages of being put on the road. How long will it take for all these 500 to be on the road?
It'll be actually 600 cars.
Okay.
And that should happen by the end of August. Registration is going on at various locations. It's not just Delhi and Andhra. We also have registration process going on in Maharashtra, in Madhya Pradesh, and also most recently we've got from Jharkhand.
Okay.
So by 31st August, all these 600 cars will be up and running at various places.
Okay. Do you feel confident of being able to meet that March 2019 deadline to ensure that all these cars, as part of the first tender, the 10,000 will be on the road?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And the companies are in line with the schedule as far as production is concerned?
Correct. Absolutely.
No problems on that front?
Not at all.
Okay. Then let me ask you about the concerns that are being raised specifically on the specifications. That the reason why personal mobility of electric vehicles hasn't really taken off is because these cars that are currently available on the road don't offer anything compelling when compared to the IC engine, which, you know, even though it might be more polluting in comparison, has a lot more to offer for the price. That is proving to be a big hurdle from a customer's perspective. How do you cross that?
Well, I don't entirely agree with this. There is an economic compelling reason. The cost of operating the EVs today is about 1/3 of the cost of operating a diesel or a petrol car.
Sure.
So there is a rationale. The reason why it is not picking up is there is no public charging infrastructure. And as I understand, the FAME 2 the policy, which is currently at the final stages of approval, as I know, lays a lot of emphasis on putting together public charging infrastructure. In fact, they have recommended, as I understand, that in every 1 million plus cities, for every 3 to 5 kilometers, you will have a public charging station.
Who is going to set up this infrastructure? Because that continues to be a question mark as well.
This is going to be the overall responsibility of the Ministry of Power.
The Ministry of Power will set this up. That is absolutely clear.
In consultation with the state governments and urban local bodies.
Okay, so you're not expecting private sector investment to come in as far as the charging infrastructure is concerned. I mean, you hope that they will, but you believe that the government is going to share a lion's share of the responsibility.
No. Government will facilitate. FAME 2 will provide up to 50% of capital subsidy. Of course, it'll be open to public and private sector entities to lay down the infrastructure.
While the Ministry of Heavy Industries is batting for a 50% subsidy, the view within the Finance Ministry seems to be very different. The view within the Finance Ministry is that there needs to be more rationalization as far as the subsidy component is concerned. And that is where the concern stems, that, you know, you've got all of this aspiration of how much you want to put on the road by way of electric mobility, but then there continues to be confusion at the policy level, especially when it comes to fiscal incentives, not just on the vehicles themselves, but also on the charging infrastructure.
Well, Shireen, unfortunately, I'm not part of that consultation process, but whatever last I have been told and known is that Power Ministry has very strongly pitched in for 50% capital subsidy for public charging infrastructure. In these 1 million plus cities, which I mentioned 3 to 5 kilometers, there should be a public charging infrastructure where it should be, and that's where the consultations with the state governments and urban local bodies is important. Also, it also has talked about a few highways where every 25 kilometers there should be a public charging infrastructure. So once this is set up, the rationale and for a private mobility will increase dramatically.
But if there were not to be that 50% capital subsidy that you believe the Power Ministry is pitching for and you hope will go through, will it then make this viable at all, especially when it comes to private investments?
It will probably not be very viable for the private sector to invest initially, because...
So the government will be forced to do it?
I mean, this is a mission of the government, and therefore the government has taken upon itself to take up this. Our rollout plan, and which we are currently doing, is also part of that larger plan. But definitely there will be some time before the private mobility will pick up. And up until then, these investments may not be the most remunerative, both for the public and the private sector. And therefore, there is a need for capital subsidy.
Okay. You know, there is this other sort of idea that's being mooted within the finance ministry, and that is higher taxes on the IC engine vehicles in order to incentivize the use of electric mobility. Do you believe that that's a good idea?
Well, if you ask me, this is happening right now. I mean, hybrids attracted 28% GST. EVs attracted 12% GST. And this is something which has been used particularly in the US to incentivize electric mobility, where a higher tax is levied on...
But till you actually create the ecosystem, till you have the infrastructure in place, is it really fair to penalize the consumer?
No, as I said, these things will go incrementally. It is not that, I mean, I can only give my personal opinion on this. I will agree with you that it should not be from day one. And that is why a capital subsidy-based model is far, far better to begin with. As you rightly say, as the number of players in the market increase, as awareness about EVs increase, government will probably look at alternatives to fund or make incentivize EVs.
What is happening on the public transportation side, especially when it comes to electric vehicles? Delhi, the government just yesterday, in fact, the cabinet has cleared the plan to put on the road 1,000 electric buses. Of course, it will go through a process of tendering as well, which they hope to get done this calendar year. What is your own sense of the electric plan when it comes to public transportation? How feasible, how realistic is it looking today?
I think that is one place which needs really a big push, because if you look at an EV, 60 to 70% of the cost of an EV is largely batteries. Now, if you are able to swap batteries, which is possible in a public transportation system, then your cost of procurement goes down very, very much. Then there are alternate models, something that Bangalore has very recently done, where you have bought EV buses on a service model. And provided them with the charging infrastructure. So I think that really has an enormous scope as we move forward. And yes, as you rightly say, it's a first large step from the Delhi government.
But again, we will then have to wait for the charging infrastructure to be put in place, no?
No, absolutely not. Because here, the buses start from the depot. You can have a charging or a swapping infrastructure there. There's enough space. There are bus stops where you can again have quick charges. So you really don't need to wait for the public charging infrastructure to kickstart public mobility.
Okay, but even that itself will take time, even though Delhi has identified the depots, etc. But even setting up the infrastructure will take its time, will it not? I mean, they're hoping to put these buses on the road sometime next year. 2019 is the aspiration. Do you believe that that is a realistic timeline?
Look, as far as availability of buses is concerned, and if you're specifically talking of Delhi, I don't see a problem in them getting 1,000 vehicles in a year's time. We have set up almost 500 charging points. It does not take much time to set up charging infrastructure. So I really don't see a challenge in so far as laying out the public. That's much simpler, if you ask me, than personal mobility.
Okay. You know, the other argument is that perhaps before we actually try and push car usage, electric car usage, we should also experiment with two-wheeler and three-wheeler usage. We're talking about public transportation, we talked about buses, but what about the idea of incentivizing two-wheelers to go electric as well as three-wheelers to go electric?
I completely agree with you. If you look at numbers, last year almost 1 million vehicles were sold worldwide, of which 500,000 was in China, and almost 70 to 80% were two-wheelers. So in the FAME 2 subsidy that is being finalized, there is subsidy for all kinds of vehicles. It does not preclude any vehicle, including the two-wheelers. Two- and three-wheelers also lend themselves for swapping very easily, making the economic case much attractive as compared to a personal car.
Let me, before we wrap up, ask you again about about the fact that so far you're saying that there have been no concerns that have been expressed by any of the 150 who are driving the electric vehicles at this point in time. You're driving 2 of them yourself.
Of course.
And happy with both.
Absolutely very happy.
All right. It's always a pleasure, Mr. Kumar. Thanks very much for joining us here on CNBC TV 18 to discuss India's electric vehicle plan.